The alien princess said, "I'll only reveal my face to him if you will marry me, human." And I said yes. Asterisk Ambassador Marcus Chen stood at the viewing window of the human diplomatic ship Harmony. As it approached the Zephyrian homeworld, the planet below looked like a giant jewel floating in space. Purple oceans reflected the light of twin suns, while silver cities sparkled across the surface like scattered diamonds. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said Captain Rodriguez, joining Marcus at the window. "Hard to believe they've been hiding from the rest of the galaxy for 300 years. Marcus nodded, adjusting his formal diplomatic uniform. "And hard to believe that 7 different species have tried to make peace with them. All failed, no pressure," the captain said with a weak smile. Marcus had studied every failed mission report during the long journey here. The Altarians had brought gifts that accidentally insulted Zephyrian ancestors. The Centauri delegation had used the wrong greeting and caused a minor war. The silicon-based crystals had somehow made the Zephyrian princess cry. Though nobody understood why, each failure made things worse. The Zephyrians controlled the only stable wormhole network in this part of the galaxy. Without their cooperation, trade routes would collapse. Entire worlds depended on those trade routes for food, medicine, and basic supplies. "Sir," called Communications Officer Park from her station. "We're getting a message from the Zephyrian Palace. They're ready to receive you." Marcus took a deep breath. "Send our response. Tell them Ambassador Chen is honored to represent humanity." 2 hours later, Marcus found himself in the most beautiful room he had ever seen. The Zephyrian throne room was carved from a single massive crystal that caught and scattered light in rainbow patterns across the walls. Floating platforms held delegates from 6 different species, all waiting to see if the humans would succeed where they had failed. The Zephyrians themselves were tall and graceful, wearing flowing robes that seemed to move like liquid starlight, but every single one wore a mask. Some masks were simple silver. Others were decorated with gems or complex patterns. Not one Zephyrian face was visible. At the center of the room, on a throne that looked like frozen lightning, sat Princess Lyrale. Her mask was the most elaborate of all, made of what looked like living metal that shifted and changed colors as she moved. Marcus could see her eyes through the mask's openings. They were large and dark, filled with an intelligence that made him feel like she was seeing right through him. "Welcome, Ambassador Chen of the humans," the princess said. Her voice was musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "We have agreed to hear your people's request for alliance." Marcus stepped forward and bowed in the style he had practiced hundreds of times. "Your Highness, humanity comes seeking friendship and mutual benefit. We offer our knowledge, our trade, and our protection in exchange for access to your wormhole network." The princess was quiet for a long moment. Round the room, the other delegates waited. Marcus could feel their tension. Everyone knew how important this moment was. "Ambassador Chen," the princess finally said, "your words are similar to others who have come before. The Vorthan promised friendship and tried to steal our technology. The hegemony offered protection and demanded we submit to their rules. Why? Should we trust humans when we have been disappointed so many times?" Marcus had prepared for this question. "Because humans are different, Your Highness. We don't seek to control or change you. We seek to understand you. We believe that differences make us stronger, not weaker." A low murmur went through the room. Some of the masked Zephyrians turned to look at each other. The princess leaned forward slightly. "Understanding requires seeing, Ambassador Chen. How can you understand what you refuse to look upon?" "I don't understand, Your Highness. For 300 years, no outsider has seen a Zephyrian face," the princess said, her voice growing sad. "We wear these masks because every species that has seen us has turned away in fear or disgust. We are too different, too strange, too alien." Marcus felt his heart racing. He was starting to understand where this was going. But the princess continued, standing up from her throne. "I am willing to make one final test. I will reveal my face to one person in this room. If that person can look upon me and not turn away, then perhaps there's hope for real understanding between our peoples." The room fell completely silent. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. However, the princess said, her voice now carrying across the crystal chamber like a bell, I will only reveal my face to someone who proves their commitment is real. Someone who will accept me completely, without knowing what they will see. She paused, and Marcus knew what was coming next. I will only reveal my face to him if you will marry me. Human. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus could see the other delegates staring at him in shock. Some looked horrified. Others looked like they were holding their breath. Marriage to an alien princess whose face he had never seen. Marriage to someone from a completely different species. Marriage that would bind not just two people, but potentially to entire civilizations. Marcus thought about his training, about the millions of people depending on these negotiations, about the princess's sad eyes visible through her mask, about the loneliness he could hear in her musical voice. But mostly, he thought about something his grandmother had told him when he was young. Marcus, the most important decisions in life aren't made with your head. They're made with your heart. Marcus stepped forward, closer to the throne. Every eye in the room was on him. He could feel the weight of history pressing down on his shoulders. Your Highness, he said, his voice clear and steady, if you are willing to trust me with such an honor, then yes, I accept. The word yes seemed to echo in the crystal chamber like a promise that would change everything. The princess sat down heavily on her throne, as if his answer had shocked her more than anyone else in the room. Round them, delegates whispered frantically to each other. In a dozen different languages, You said yes, the princess whispered, so quietly that only Marcus could hear her. I did, Your Highness. Do you understand what you have agreed to? Marcus smiled, feeling strangely calm despite the enormous decision he had just made. Not completely. But I understand that sometimes the best way to build a bridge is to step onto it first. Even when you can't see where it leads. For the first time since he had entered the throne room, Princess Lyrale laughed. It was a sound like silver bells mixed with surprise and something that might have been hope. Ambassador Chen, she said, her voice now carrying to every corner of the room. It seems we have much to discuss. The news of Marcus's acceptance spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every major species was talking about the human ambassador, who had agreed to marry an alien princess he had never seen. Marcus sat in his quarters, aboard the Harmony, reading message after message on his communication device. His own human delegation was split down the middle. Admiral Foster called him either brave or completely insane. Dr. Sarah Kim, the mission's cultural expert, sent a message saying this might be the most brilliant diplomatic move in human history, or our biggest disaster. The other species were even more dramatic in their reactions. The Altarian ambassador sent a formal protest, claiming humans were reckless and dangerous to galactic stability. The Centauri delegation simply packed up and left the planet, saying they wanted nothing to do with whatever madness the humans were planning. But not everyone was upset. The younger members of several delegations sent private messages of support. One message from a Vorthan diplomat said, perhaps it takes the youngest species in the galaxy to show us all how to be brave. A soft chime at his door interrupted Marcus's reading. Come in, he called. Princess Lyrale entered, still wearing her elaborate mask, but now dressed in simpler robes of deep blue. She moved with careful grace, as if she was not used to being in such informal settings. Ambassador Chen, she said, then paused. I suppose I should call you Marcus now, if you like. Marcus said, standing up and offering her a chair. And what should I call you? Lyrale will do well enough. She sat down, her mask catching the light from his room's window. I came to thank you and to warn you. Thank me for saying yes, for not laughing or running away. In 300 years, no one has ever accepted my challenge. I had begun to think no one ever would. Marcus studied her body language. Despite her formal words, he could see tension in the way she held her shoulders. And the warning? The acceptance was only the beginning. Lyrale said, now come the trials, ancient traditions that test whether you are truly worthy to marry into the royal line. Some have called them impossible. Others have called them cruel. What kind of trials? Marcus asked, though he was already forming plans in his mind. Humans were good at adapting to impossible situations. 7 tests over 7 days, Lyrale explained. Each one will challenge a different aspect of your character. Intelligence, courage, compassion, creativity, wisdom, sacrifice, and finally, understanding. And if I fail? Lyrale was quiet for a moment. Then you return to your ship, and the Zephyrian Empire remains closed to the galaxy forever. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He spent hours studying every piece of information he could find about Zephyrian culture, history, and customs. Dr. Kim had compiled extensive files, but so much was still unknown. The Zephyrians had been isolated for so long that most galactic knowledge about them was just guesswork. The first trial began at dawn. Marcus was led to a garden filled with impossible plants, trees that grew downward into the sky, flowers that sang in harmony, grass that changed colors with each step. In the center of the garden sat a simple table with what looked like a puzzle box made of crystal and light. The trial of intelligence, announced an elderly Zephyrian wearing a mask decorated with mathematical symbols. Inside this box is the key to understanding Zephyrian science. Solve the puzzle, and you prove your mind is worthy. You have until sunset. Marcus examined the box carefully. It was covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change when he wasn't looking directly at them. Other species had probably tried to solve it using their own mathematical systems. But Marcus had an advantage. Humans were excellent at pattern recognition and thinking outside established rules. Instead of trying to decode the symbols, Marcus began to observe how they changed. He noticed they responded to touch, to light, even to his breathing. After hours of careful experimentation, he realized the box wasn't just a puzzle, it was alive. In a way, it was responding to his emotions and intentions. When Marcus stopped trying to solve the box and instead began to communicate with it, treating it like a living being rather than a machine, the symbols suddenly aligned and the box opened with a sound like distant music. Inside was a small crystal that projected a holographic image of the Zephyrian solar system, complete with trade routes and defensive positions. It was exactly the kind of strategic information that other species had tried to steal or demand. Interesting, said the elderly Zephyrian. You are the first to understand that our technology is not separate from our biology. Most species see only puzzles to be solved. You saw a relationship to be built. The second trial, the test of courage, took place in a cavern deep beneath the palace. Marcus had to navigate through chambers filled with illusions designed to trigger every possible fear. But instead of fighting the illusions or trying to ignore them, Marcus talked to them. He acknowledged his fears, but explained why he was willing to face them anyway. I'm afraid of failing my people, he said to a projection of disappointed human faces. But I'm more afraid of not trying at all. I'm afraid you'll reject me when you see who I really am, he said to an illusion of Princess Lyrale turning away from him. But I believe understanding is worth the risk. By the third day, Marcus was beginning to understand something important about Zephyrian culture. Their trials weren't designed to exclude outsiders. They were designed to find someone who could think like a Zephyrian, someone who valued relationships over conquest, understanding over control, harmony over dominance. The trial of compassion involved caring for injured creatures in the palace's medical wing. Marcus spent the day learning Zephyrian healing techniques and listening to the stories of each patient. He didn't just treat their wounds, he treated their loneliness, their fear, their need to be heard and understood. Princess Lyrale visited him during this trial, watching as he sang a human lullaby to calm a frightened young Zephyrian who had been hurt in an accident. Your people have songs for healing, she asked quietly. We have songs for everything, Marcus replied, gently bandaging the child's injured wing. Music is how humans connect to each other across any distance. We have music too, Lyrale said. And for the first time, Marcus heard something personal in her voice. Perhaps you could teach me some of your songs. That evening, after Marcus had passed his third trial, he sat with Lyrale in a small garden near her quarters. She taught him a Zephyrian melody that sounded like wind through crystal caves. He taught her amazing grace, explaining how humans use music to find hope in dark times. "Marcus," she said as the twin suns set behind them, "why did you really say yes? You could have asked for time to think. You could have negotiated terms. Why did you accept immediately?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "Because," he said finally, "the loneliest people are often the ones most worth knowing. And because someone who offers to show their true face to a stranger is someone worth believing in." Through her mask, he could see Liralay's eyes widen slightly. For a moment, the formal princess disappeared, and he glimpsed the person underneath, someone who had been waiting her entire life. For someone to see her as more than just a diplomatic obstacle. "For trials remain," she said softly. "I'll be ready," Marcus promised, and for the first time since arriving on this strange world, he truly believed he would be. The fourth trial began before dawn. Marcus was led to a workshop filled with strange tools and materials he had never seen before. Crystals that hummed with energy, metals that bent like clay, and paints that seemed to glow with their own inner light. "The trial of creativity," announced a Zephyrian artist whose mask was covered in swirling patterns that moved like flowing water. "You must create something that shows the bridge between your people and ours. You have until the sun reaches its highest point." Marcus walked around the workshop, touching different materials and thinking. Other species had probably tried to create impressive sculptures or complex machines. But Marcus remembered what he had learned from the previous trials. Zephyrians value connection over complexity. He found a simple piece of crystal and began to carve, not with the advanced tools, but with a small knife from his own pocket. As he worked, he told the watching Zephyrian stories about Earth, about humans who came from different continents and cultures but learned to work together, about art that brought people together instead of keeping them apart. What he created was not impressive to look at, just a simple crystal sculpture of two hands, reaching toward each other. One hand was carved in the human style, with 5 fingers. The other was carved as he imagined a Zephyrian hand might look, with 6 longer fingers. Between the hands, he had carved a small heart. "Why a heart?" asked the artist. "Because," Marcus said, "when people truly care about each other, differences in appearance don't matter. The heart sees what the eyes might miss." The artist was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached up and touched her mask. "You speak of things we have almost forgotten," she said softly. That afternoon, during his rest period, Marcus received an encrypted message on his personal device. It was from Princess Liralle. "Meet me in the archive tonight. There are things you must know before the final trials, things about our history, that will help you understand why we hide." The archive was a vast library deep within the palace, filled with floating crystals that contained the recorded history of the Zephyrian people. Marcus found Liralle waiting for him beside a crystal that pulsed with soft blue light. "This contains the records of the Great Betrayal," she said without greeting. 300 years ago, we were not hidden. We welcomed visitors from across the galaxy. We shared our technology, our culture, our friendship." She touched the crystal, and holographic images filled the air around them. Marcus saw Zephyrians, without masks, their faces visible and unique. Some had crystalline features that caught light like living jewels. Others had skin that changed colors with their emotions. All looked different, but all looked intelligent and kind. "We believed that differences were gifts to be celebrated," Liralle continued. "We thought other species would see beauty in our diversity, as we saw beauty in theirs." The images changed, showing Zephyrian cities filled with visitors from many worlds, markets where different species traded not just goods, but art, music, and ideas. It looked like paradise. "What happened?" Marcus asked, though he was beginning to guess. "The hegemony came," Liralle said, her voice becoming hard. "They promised friendship and protection. But once they learned about our technology and mapped our worlds, they decided we were too strange to live freely. They said our appearance was frightening to their people. They demanded we either change ourselves to look more like them, or accept being locked away on reservation worlds." The images now showed darker scenes, Zephyrian families being separated, children being taken to facilities where they were taught to hide their natural appearance. Beautiful cities being abandoned as people fled to their homeworld. When we refused both options, they tried to force us, Lyrale continued. They brought armies. They said we could be useful as workers if we would just cover ourselves and stop being so. Alien. Marcus felt anger growing in his chest. You fought back. We did. And we won. But the cost was terrible. We lost so many people. Worse, we lost our trust. The hegemony fell apart years later, destroyed by their own greed and cruelty. But by then, we had decided that isolation was safer than taking such risks again. And the masks were meant to be temporary, Lyrale said sadly, a way to protect ourselves while we healed. But fear has a way of becoming habit. 300 years later, most of our people have never shown their faces to anyone outside their immediate family. Marcus studied the holographic images of how beautiful Zephyrian society had once been. And you? Have you ever shown your face to anyone? Only my parents, before they died, and my advisors, when absolutely necessary for formal ceremonies. Lyrale's voice became very quiet. I have been alone behind this mask for 20 years, Marcus. Do you understand what that means? He was beginning to. The princess wasn't just isolated from other species, she was isolated from her own people. The weight of representing an entire civilization had made her a symbol rather than a person. The trials, Marcus said suddenly, they're not really about testing worthiness, are they? You understand quickly, Lyrale said with something like relief in her voice. They are about finding someone who can see beyond appearances, someone who values connection over conquest. Someone who might be willing to take the risk of showing their true self to others. The fifth trial, the test of wisdom, took place the next morning in the palace's council chamber. Marcus was presented with 3 real diplomatic problems that the Zephyrian Council was actually facing. He had to propose solutions that would work for both the immediate situation and the long-term health of their society. But instead of trying to solve the problems like a human would, Marcus asked questions like a Zephyrian would. He focused on understanding the relationships between different groups, the historical context of each issue, and the emotional needs of the people involved. The water shortage in the southern provinces, he said to the council, isn't really about water. It's about the southern cities feeling ignored by the capital. If you build the new aqueducts as a joint project, with both southern and capital engineers working together, you solve both the practical problem and the relationship problem. The council members looked at each other in surprise. It was a solution they had never considered. The 6th trial was the most dangerous yet, the test of sacrifice. Marcus was taken to a part of the city where an old building had collapsed, trapping several Zephyrian workers inside. The rescue teams had the equipment to save them, but it would take hours, and the building was still unstable. You could wait safely while others do the dangerous work, explained the trial master. Or you can help, knowing that your life will be at risk for people you do not know. Marcus didn't hesitate. He spent the next 8 hours crawling through dangerous spaces, carrying water to trapped workers, and helping to stabilize collapsed walls. When a section of the building started to fall, he pushed a young Zephyrian worker out of the way and barely escaped being crushed himself. That evening, as medics treated cuts and bruises on his arms, Princess Lyrale visited him in the medical wing. Why did you do it? She asked. You could have been killed saving people. You had just met. Marcus winced as a medic cleaned a particularly deep cut, because that's what people do. He said simply, when someone needs help, you help them. It doesn't matter if they're human or Zephyrian or something else entirely. Lyrale was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, tomorrow is the final trial, the test of understanding. Are you ready? Marcus looked at her masked face, thinking about everything he had learned over the past week, about loneliness and courage, about trust and betrayal, about the different ways people could be beautiful. I think so, he said. But Lyrale, whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that getting to know you has been the greatest honor of my life. Through her mask, he could see her eyes fill with tears. Marcus, she whispered, I hope you still feel that way after you see what I really look like outside the medical wing windows. The twin suns were setting over the Crystal City. Tomorrow would bring the final trial, and with it, the moment that would change everything. The seventh day dawned gray and stormy. Dark clouds gathered over the Crystal City as Marcus prepared for his final trial. He had barely slept, thinking about everything Princess Lyrale had told him. Today would decide not just his own fate, but the future of both their peoples. The final trial took place in the most sacred chamber of the Zephyrian Palace, the Hall of Truth. The room was completely empty except for two chairs facing each other in the center. Ancient crystals embedded in the walls pulsed with a soft light that seemed to respond to the emotions of anyone who entered. Princess Lyrale was already waiting when Marcus arrived. Today she wore simple white robes, and her elaborate mask had been replaced with a plainer one made of polished silver. "The trial of understanding," she said. Her voice formal, but Marcus could hear the nervousness underneath. "This test is different from all the others." "How so?" Marcus asked, taking the chair across from her. "Because it tests both of us." Lyrale said, "For 6 days, you have shown wisdom, courage, creativity, and compassion. But understanding requires trust from both sides. It requires someone to be willing to show their truth, and someone else to be willing to accept it." Marcus felt his heart begin to race. The mask, yes. Lyrale's hands trembled slightly as she reached up toward the silver covering. "Marcus, I need you to understand something before I do this. When other species have seen Zephyrian faces, they have called us monsters, demons, nightmares. Some have even said we were cursed by their gods." "Lyrale, please, let me finish." She took a shaky breath. "Our faces are not like any other species in the galaxy. We change with our emotions. We have features that no other being has. We look alien in ways that most minds cannot accept." Marcus leaned forward in his chair. "And you think I'll run away? I think you're braver than anyone who has come before," she said quietly. "But I'm still afraid. 20 years of hiding behind masks. It makes you forget that you have a right to be seen." The crystals in the walls pulsed brighter as her emotions intensified. "Lyrale," Marcus said gently, 6 months ago, I had never left Earth. I had never seen an alien world or talked to a non-human intelligence. But do you know what I learned on my first day in space?" She shook her head. "That the universe is so much more beautiful than anything we could have imagined. From our small world, every new thing I've discovered has made existence richer, not scarier." He smiled. "I'm not afraid of how you look. I'm honored that you trust me enough to show me." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The storm outside sent rain pattering against the crystal windows. Then, slowly, Princess Lyrale reached up and began to remove her mask. The first thing Marcus noticed was that her skin seemed to be made of living crystal, shifting between deep purple and silver as her emotions changed. Her face had the basic structure he expected: eyes, nose, mouth, but everything was different. Her eyes were larger than human eyes, with pupils that dilated and contracted like flowers opening and closing. Her nose was smaller, more delicate, with tiny gems embedded along the bridge that sparkled when she breathed. But the most striking feature was the pattern of bioluminescent marks that traced across her cheeks and forehead like flowing water. They pulsed gently in rhythm with her heartbeat, changing from blue to green to gold as her emotions shifted. She had 4 arms instead of 2, which Marcus had not expected. The second pair was smaller and more delicate, with 6 fingers each instead of 5. All 4 hands were gracefully shaped, with skin that seemed to hold starlight beneath its surface. As Marcus watched, small crystalline formations grew from her temples like a living crown, and her hair moved as if it were underwater, each strand catching and reflecting light in impossible ways. She was absolutely, undeniably alien, and she was the most beautiful being Marcus had ever seen. "Well," Lyrale whispered, her voice barely audible. The bioluminescent patterns on her face were now pulsing rapidly with fear. "What do you think?" Marcus was quiet for several seconds, not because he was horrified, but because he was trying to find words adequate for what he was seeing. "I think," he said finally, That every species that turned away from you was missing something incredible. You're not just beautiful, Lyrale, you're our come to life. The patterns on her face shifted from fearful blue to surprised gold, then to something warm and pink that Marcus guessed meant happiness. You really mean that? Look at me, Marcus said, meeting her large, flower-like eyes. Do I look like someone who's lying? For the first time since he had met her, Princess Lyrale smiled. Her smile was different from a human smile, wider, with lips that seemed to shimmer like oil on water. But the joy behind it was unmistakable. Marcus, she said, I think I'm beginning to understand why humans might be exactly what the galaxy needs. Their moment was interrupted by urgent chiming from the communication crystals embedded in the walls. A holographic image appeared showing Captain Rodriguez from the Harmony, Ambassador Chen. The captain said, his face grim, we're picking up encrypted communications from several ships in orbit. It looks like someone is planning to attack the palace tonight. Marcus stood up quickly. Who? Unknown. But whoever it is, they don't want these negotiations to succeed. Princess Lyrale, still unveiled, moved to another crystal panel. Her four hands worked quickly, accessing Zephyrian security systems. Our sensors confirm it, she said. 3 unmarked ships, approaching under stealth. They'll be here within 2 hours. Can your defenses handle them? Marcus asked. Our defenses have been dormant for 3 centuries, Lyrale said, her bioluminescent patterns now pulsing with worry. We never expected to need them. Marcus's mind raced. Someone, probably members of species that had failed in their own negotiations, wanted to make sure the humans failed too. If they couldn't have access to Zephyrian space, they would make sure no one could. We need to evacuate the palace, Marcus said. No, Lyrale's voice was firm. If we run now, it proves to my people that opening up to outsiders only brings danger. The conservative faction will use this to seal our borders forever. Then what do you suggest? Lyrale looked at him, her strange, beautiful features set with determination. We face this together. You've passed all 7 trials, Marcus. You've proven that humans can be trusted. Now let's prove that Zephyrians and humans can defend what we've built. Through the crystal windows, Marcus could see the first of the attacking ships breaking through the storm clouds, weapons charging for assault. Your people, Marcus said, they'll fight alongside humans? For the first time in 300 years, Lyrale said, they'll fight alongside anyone. Because you've shown us that not all outsiders are enemies. She reached out with one of her 4 hands and took his single human hand in hers. Her skin felt warm and smooth, like polished stone that had been sitting in sunlight. Together, she asked. Together, Marcus agreed. As the first energy blast struck the palace shields, Marcus realized that the real test was just beginning. It was one thing to win someone's trust in peaceful trials. It was another thing entirely to prove that trust was justified when everything was on the line. But looking at Lyrale's unveiled face, seeing the courage and hope shining in her flower-like eyes, Marcus felt ready for whatever came next. The universe was about to learn what humans and Zephyrians could accomplish when they stopped hiding from each other and started working together. The palace shook as energy blasts struck the ancient shields. Marcus could hear crystal formations cracking somewhere deep in the building. Alarms echoed through the corridors as Zephyrian guards rushed to defensive positions they hadn't used. In 3 centuries, the shield generators are failing, Princess Lyrale said, her 4 hands dancing across multiple control panels. Her bioluminescent patterns were pulsing bright red with stress. These systems were never meant for this kind of attack. Marcus activated his communicator. Captain Rodriguez, what can you tell me about those ships? 3 heavy cruisers, the captain's voice crackled through the static. Advanced weapons, but the design doesn't match any known species. Someone built these specifically for this attack. Another blast shook the palace. Through the crystal windows, Marcus could see the attacking ships positioning themselves for a final assault. They were planning to destroy the palace completely, taking both the princess and the human ambassador with it. If they succeed, Lyrale said quietly, it will prove to my people that opening our borders brings only death. The conservative faction will take control, and Zephyria will be sealed forever. Marcus looked at her unveiled face, seeing determination, mixed with fear in her flower-like eyes. An idea began forming in his mind. Lyrale, you said your people haven't fought alongside outsiders in 300 years. But they've been watching me for a week, haven't they? Watching me pass the trials? Yes. The trials are broadcast to the entire planet. It's tradition. Then they've seen a human work with Zephyrians. They've seen cooperation instead of conquest. Marcus moved to the communication panel. What if we show them something even more powerful? What do you mean? What if we show them their princess fighting alongside a human, not hiding behind traditions, but standing together in the open? Lyrale's pattern shifted to surprised. Gold? Marcus, that's never been done. A member of the royal family fighting beside an outsider. Some would call it treasonous, and others might call it exactly what your people need to see. Before Lyrale could respond, a new voice echoed through the chamber. Elder Vorthok, the head of the conservative faction, appeared as a hologram. His mask was elaborate and ancient, covering every trace of his features. Princess Lyrale, he said sternly, we demand you return to the secure bunkers immediately. This attack proves that contact with outsiders brings only danger. When this is over, we will seal our borders permanently. Elder Vorthok, Lyrale said, standing straighter. I disagree. You disagree? The elder's voice rose in shock. Child, you have no authority to. I have the authority given to me. By completing the 7 trials, Lyrale interrupted, her voice carrying new strength. Ambassador Chen has proven that not all outsiders seek to harm us. Now I intend to prove that Zephyrians need not hide from those who come in friendship. Slowly, deliberately, she reached up and removed her mask completely on the broadcast. That was reaching every Zephyrian on the planet. The silence that followed was deafening. Even through the hologram, Marcus could see Elder Vorthok's shock. Princess, the elder whispered, what have you done? What should have been done centuries ago? Lyrale said, I am showing my people that we need not live in fear. The palace shook again as the attacking ships moved closer. Marcus could see they were preparing for a final bombardment that would destroy the building completely. Captain Rodriguez, Marcus called into his communicator. Can the Harmony help with the defense? We're a diplomatic ship, Ambassador. We've got basic shields and communications, but no real weapons. Marcus looked at the tactical display Lyrale had activated. The human ship was small compared to the attackers, but it had something the others didn't, the trust of both species involved. Captain, I need you to do something that might sound crazy, Marcus said. Take the Harmony between the attacking ships and the palace. Make yourself a shield. Sir, that's suicide. They'll destroy us in seconds. Not if the Zephyrians are helping. Lyrale, can your people link their shields to our ship? Her pattern shifted as she calculated quickly. It's theoretically possible, but we've never tried to synchronize our technology with alien systems. But we could try, together. Lyrale smiled, and even in the midst of danger, Marcus felt his heart skip at the sight. Yes, together we could try. The next few minutes were the most intense of Marcus's life, while Lyrale worked to modify Zephyrian shield technology. Marcus coordinated with Captain Rodriguez to position the Harmony as a protective barrier. The human ship was like a tiny moon compared to the massive attackers, but it was broadcasting on all frequencies that humans and Zephyrians were working together. Shield link established, Lyrale announced. Marcus, this is either brilliant or insane. Sometimes there's not much difference, Marcus said. The attacking ships fired their main weapons, expecting to sweep away the small human vessel and destroy the palace behind it. Instead, their energy blasts struck a combined shield system that held firm. Zephyrian crystal technology merged with human engineering, created something stronger than either could achieve alone. But more importantly, every Zephyrian on the planet was watching their princess work side by side with a human to defend their world. Princess, came another voice over the communication system. This time it was Commander Zylara, head of the Zephyrian military forces. My pilots are requesting permission to join the defense. Permission granted, Lyrale said immediately. They also request permission to fight without masks, as you have shown them. Marcus saw Lyrale's pattern shift to surprised joy. Granted, she said. Within minutes, Zephyrian fighters were launching from hidden bays throughout the Crystal City. But these weren't the masked, hidden defenders of old. These were pilots whose faces were visible through their cockpit windows, their bioluminescent patterns bright with determination and hope. The attacking ships, outnumbered and facing unified resistance they hadn't expected, began to retreat. As they fled, one final transmission came through on an open channel. "This isn't over," a distorted voice said. "The galaxy will see what you've done. They'll fear you more than ever. Let them see," Princess Lyrale said, her voice carrying across all frequencies. "Let them see Zephyrians and humans working together. Let them see that fear ends when understanding begins." Later that evening, as the damaged palace was being repaired and the celebration continued in the Crystal City, Marcus found himself back in the garden where he and Lyrale had first shared music. She was waiting for him, still unveiled, her patterns now a gentle, happy blue-green. "So," she said as he sat beside her, "I believe we have a wedding to plan." Marcus laughed. "Are you sure? A week ago you didn't even know if I'd run away from your appearance. A week ago, I was afraid to show my face to anyone. Now my entire people are talking about removing their masks when they meet with outsiders." Her pattern shifted to warm gold. "You've changed everything, Marcus. We changed everything." He corrected. "Humans couldn't have done this alone. It took both our peoples working together." Above them, the first ships in 3 centuries were approaching Zephyrian space, not as invaders or conquerors, but as visitors welcomed by a people who were no longer afraid to be seen. "What will we call this new age?" Lyrale asked, watching the lights of approaching vessels. Marcus took her hand, one of her 4 graceful hands in his single human one. "How about the Unity Protocol? A time when differences are celebrated, instead of hidden." "The Unity Protocol," Lyrale repeated, and her smile lit up her features like starlight. "I like that." As the twin suns set over the Crystal City, Marcus realized that saying yes to an impossible proposal had led to something neither species could have achieved alone. They had built a bridge across the darkness between worlds, and that bridge would change the galaxy forever. The age of hiding was over. The age of unity had begun, and it had started with one human who wasn't afraid to look beyond a mask, and one princess who was brave enough to remove it.